The whole process is so grand and all-encompassing that it really can't be threatened by the occasional late-night no-hitter. It is important that a boy spend time with his father.
But how do you know that? Your dad didn't let you stay up with him.
That's precisely why I do know.
William Daniels, the actor who played Mr. Feeny on Boy Meets World, initially walked out on the first table reads because he felt that the character he was being presented with was foolish and was played for laughs. And therefore, the show's creator, Michael Jacobs, he rewritten the character, and he rewritten the character in such a way where the character became a role model, a mentor, and inspiring personality for the kids watching the show growing up. And William Daniels, he said that he refused to play a character whose profession was underappreciated and underpaid. And therefore, he wanted a character that was way more respectful. And quoting from his book, he said they were kind enough to do that. So, in the previous video, I spoke about Mr. Feeny as a teacher, his impact and influence as a teacher, and for the kids growing up watching the show. In this episode, in this video, I want to talk about Mr. Feeny as an individual. I want to dive a little deeper into his character. I feel that upon rewatching the show, I discovered that Mr. Feeny's character had a lot more nuance and complexities. Um, so now we don't know much about Mr. Feeney's upbringing and the way he was brought up, but from this scene from season one, where he's having a conversation with Corey in his backyard, he mentions that when he was around Corey's age, um, President Truman was announcing the ending of World War II. And so he requested his father that particular night if he could stay up and watch the announcements. And his father refuses and says he can't stay up late since he has to wake up early for school tomorrow. And so, because Corey is so young in this episode, Mr. Feeney kind of has to read between the lines for him. And he tells him that it's not because my father valued education, it's because my father didn't want me hanging around his drinking buddies. And so what that really meant was that his father just didn't want him hanging out with him. He would much rather hang out with his buddies and watch a significant moment in history with his friends rather than his own son. And later in that scene, he says that it's important for a boy to spend time with his father. And the way he says this, uh, there was a lot of like regret and something that was left unfulfilled. And so we can conclude that Mr. Feeney didn't necessarily have the closest relationship with his father, and he certainly didn't grow up with the sort of male role model that he became to many of his students. Now, if we historically analyze the context of Mr. Feeney's story, since it was set in the 1940s, the fathers of the 30s and 40s weren't necessarily the greatest fathers because these individuals were marked by simply the circumstances that they were living in. Since it was the era of the Great Depression, World War II, so these individuals didn't have much opportunities. They didn't live in great living conditions, and so these individuals were truly traumatized from the circumstances that they were living in. And unfortunately, this kind of also led them to not have the greatest relationships with their families and certainly their children as well. So we can kind of understand the sort of environment that Mr. Feeney grew up in. He didn't grow up with certainly a stable father figure. Um, and certainly not a father figure that he later became. Because one of the elements of Mr. Feeney's character was that he had a fatherly concern regarding his students. He actually cared for them like how a father would. In a way, he became a father figure, a mentor, a role model for his students. And so I think it's very interesting that a man who grew up in such an environment grows up to become such a great mentor for many of his students, simply because Mr. Feeney had values and principles that people of his generation simply didn't have. Mr. Feeney had this concern for his students and their well-being, which needs to be talked about. Like I said, there's a lot more to this character than we actually initially anticipated as kids. A man who had to go up against all odds. He had to break through some of the toxic patterns that were passed down to him, and he broke them. He became the sort of guy who wouldn't hang out with his drinking buddies. He became the sort of man who would help nurture a generation of kids into well-rounded adults. So I feel that the show creators gave Mr. Feeney's character some great nuance. For example, in season 4, when he meets Eric in Boston, Mr. Feeney is there to meet a friend of his, and Eric is there for a convention because he's working at his dad's sporting goods store. And so they kind of run into each other at this like restaurant slash bar, and Eric is very disappointed, but they run into each other nonetheless. And Mr. Feeney kind of explains Eric the dynamics of his relationship with his friend, and he talks about how they meet once a year at the same time, and they care for each other. They know and sense that there is a connection between the two, but it's um, essentially not enough for them to kind of live their lives for each other and start their own lives together. And each year, both of them they take turns asking each other um, or popping the question if they want to start their life together. And the way Mr. Feeney is expressing his story to Eric and his confusion, really, I thought it was very interesting because apart because up until then, we saw Mr. Feeney as this like teacher who always knew what to do and always had these like great life lessons to tell to his students. But in this particular storyline of Mr. Feeney, it was very interesting that this man who supposedly has it all figured out actually doesn't. He has confusing relationships, and um, he has certain aspects of his life that are still confusing. And so when he's further explaining his relationship to Eric, he kind of expresses his loneliness. He asks Eric if, in the twilight of his life, will he be able to find love, and has he lost his opportunity in finding love because he never took the risk? And so, Mr. Feeney, he is analyzing his relationship with this woman. He does understand that both of them, it's not that they are being selfish, it's that both of them are scared of taking that risk of, you know, taking that chance and starting a life with someone that you may or may not know. And when you are young, you can do that because you don't think about the consequences as much. But as you get older, all you think about is consequences. And I feel that this was a very, very interesting storyline because, again, a man who has it all figured out, he has certain confusions in his life as well. He has certain aspects that he hasn't all figured out. So this was my take on Mr. Feeny as an individual. Um, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, let me know in the comments below which life lesson of Mr. Feeny impacted you the most.
I love you all. Class dismissed.